We'll figure it out. All right. Great. Awesome. Good evening, everyone. We will now salute the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get started, we just want to have a moment of silence for a longtime Maplewood resident, Corey Avila Fernandez. She was 60 years of age. She lost her valiant battle with cancer, and she will be missed by the community. So we can just have a moment of silence, please. Rest in peace. Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231, Public Laws of 1975, this is to state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board of the municipal building, by mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2021 to the News Record and Star Ledger in December 2020, and by filing said notice in the office of the Township Clerk.
Ms. Adams?
Here.
Mr. Daffis?
Here.
Mr. DeLuca?
Here.
Mr. Lembrick?
Here.
Mayor McGehee?
Here.
Whereas Chapter 231, Public Laws of 1975, commonly known as the Open Public Meetings Act, requires that all meetings of public bodies be open to the public. And whereas Section 7A provides that the governing body has the discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public at any meeting. And whereas desire the governing body to comply with the provision of this act, same time to conduct its business in an orderly and expeditious manner, now therefore be resolved by the Township Committee, Township Maplewood, does hereby prohibit, except as set forth in the formal agenda, active participation in the deliberations of the governing body by the public, and except as otherwise prescribed by law, does limit the public to the observation of the actions and discussions of the governing body at all of its regular and special meetings.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mayor McGehee?
Yes. And thank you, Ms. Fritzen, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to the February 16th Township Committee meeting. I will briefly run through the agenda and then we will begin. First, I'd like to recognize, and we're all very excited to have our Congressman Donald Payne Jr. with us this evening. He will have a presentation and provides with the overview of many items that are significant and relevant to our community shortly after I finish this introduction. We will be approving a board and committee appointment for the Maplewood Arts Council. We will then have our first public comment session, agenda items only. Tonight, we have 3 ordinances on final. One related to accessory dwelling units. The second in relation to state highway transportation standards for site triangles for development projects. And third, a bond ordinance for the construction of our new library. At that point, we have 2 ordinances on introduction. These are related to our discussions related to our finances from the February 2nd meeting. The first ordinance is in relation to the appropriation of $300,000 for improvements to our pool utility. And the second ordinance is related to various capital improvements which we discussed, inclusive of our township roof, our police building, and our mediation with the Department of Public Works facility. After that, we'll have reports from our department. Mr. Kaloje is with us this evening, so we may hear from him. And then we'll have our administrative reports. We'll hear from our Township Administrator, Mr. Schuster, our Township Attorney, Mr. Desiderio, and our Township Clerk, Ms. Fritzen. At that point, we'll move into reports from our elected officials. We will first hear from Deputy Mayor Dean Daffis. We will then hear from Committeewoman Nancy Adams. And then we'll hear from Committeeman Vic DeLuca, Committeeman Greg Lembrick, and then myself. Tonight, we have 5 discussion items: our cannabis local tax, our ERA coalition, our SALT standing declaration, and we're happy to have, again, the Congressman on this evening in that regard. A proposal regarding our fleet vehicle licensing pilot, and grease traps. After that, we'll move to our consent agenda. Tonight, we only have 6 items on the consent agenda, which include our traffic engineer's appointment, authorization of municipal roof and HVAC replacement, the approving of emergency temporary appropriations, bills and claims, and then the minutes of our minutes from the regular and closed sessions from February. After that, we'll move into our second and final public comment on any agenda item or any subject matter rather, and then we will adjourn. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce and yield the floor to our great congressman. We really appreciate your time this evening, sir, and I will yield the floor to you. Congressman Payne.
Always have to remember that on mute. And I'd like to thank the mayor for that kind introduction. Every time he says great congressman, I look around the room and oh yeah, I'm the only one here. So thank you for that. It's very, very, very kind of you. I really appreciate and love the Township of Maplewood. It has fond memories of my growing up. So it's always a delight to be here with you. It's still a very difficult time for our country. The coronavirus continues to affect daily life. But unlike last year, there is some good news to report. There is a new effective vaccine and new ones that could be on the way in the next month or so. Right now, we are vaccinating about 1 million Americans every day. And at that rate, we could reach the threshold for herd immunity in the fall. But I'm confident that we will increase the vaccination rates under this new administration that has dove into it full bore and has made it a commitment in its first 100 days to up those numbers. If that happens, we might be able to reopen society safely and completely before the summer's over, God willing. But until that day, I'm fighting in Congress to get you the resources you need to survive this global pandemic. And I'm glad that we have the Biden administration to support such actions. Last year in Congress, we approved about $8.7 billion to help local and state governments deal with the coronavirus directly. We provided $4.5 billion for state and local health departments. And we provided $300 million to support local vaccine distribution. Right now, President Biden is working on the current COVID-19 stimulus package. It is called the American Rescue Plan. And there are parts that will benefit Maplewood residents in several ways. It would provide an additional $1,400 to help Americans pay bills during this crisis. I support this, but I would like to see struggling American families receive $2,000 a month until the crisis is ended. But I continue to talk to the administration about that. But those are tough negotiations. The Biden plan includes an additional $400 in unemployment benefits to jobless Americans until October. It includes $30 billion in rental assistance. It stops evictions and foreclosures until October. And it also adds $15 billion to the popular payroll protection program so small businesses can keep their employees on their payroll. This is very important to myself and the Biden administration with respect to the PPP program. Small businesses are our backbones. And I know walking through Maplewood Village, that's definitely the key. So we have been adamant about strengthening that program and making sure that the money gets to our small businesses. There are people that took advantage of that program in the last iteration, but we have closed those loopholes and even have forced some people to give the money back. It also included an additional $210 billion in loans for venture capital to startup and small businesses. So another 210 for venture capital, startup, and small businesses. Thankfully, there is aid that will help Maplewood as well. The plan provides $350 billion in badly needed aid to states and cities. Based on early calculations that I went through with my staff earlier, is estimated that Maplewood would receive $4.7 million. In addition, the plan establishes a national vaccination program. It would use $160 billion to support community vaccination efforts, such as improved vaccination supplies, increased number of staff to provide vaccine injections, and better transportation to make sure vaccinations arrive to communities on time. But one of the main topics that's everyone's mind is, when will our children return to school in person? Biden's plan includes $130 billion to help schools reopen safely and completely. The money could be used to reduce class sizes or to modify spaces for in-person instruction. It would be used to purchase protective equipment for students and staff. It could be used to improve ventilation and place a nurse in every school. And it could be used also to help students learn virtually with equipment or connections. Personally, I'm very committed to getting students back into the classroom safely. We know how important that in-school education and interaction is for our children. I wrote a letter to the Department of Health and Human Services to designate teachers as frontline workers. This move would help them get the vaccinations faster. I also wrote a letter to President Biden to implement my Mask for Students Act to pay for masks worn by students in schools. The federal government would pick up the cost. And I think it's a good time to restore the unlimited SALT deductions for American workers and families. That is something that we believe in this Congress we can pass. No longer do we have an administration that is obstructive, and also the number of senators that would be obstructive. So I support Congressman Pascarell's bill to remove the limits on the SALT deductions already. People need their money to help them recover from this coronavirus physically and financially. If we remove the SALT limitations before taxes are due, it could help millions of them use that money for whatever they need. My website has a page dedicated to helping you apply for the benefits from these aid packages. So please visit pain.house.gov. It contains links and agencies and departments to help you get those funds, as well as clarity on the PPP guidelines. It also has information about unemployment benefits and how to keep your family safe during the pandemic. Again, my website is pain.house.gov. And if you have specific requests, please contact my district office at 973-645-3213. We're on the job to help you get what you need. And I'm proud to say, with the help of my staff, my office is not closed during the pandemic. And I appreciate my staff for hanging in there and doing what we need to do for the people of the 10th District. So again, my number is 973-645-3213. So thank you for inviting me. It is always a pleasure to speak to my constituents in Maplewood, and let me know if there are any questions that I can try to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman Payne. And always, we appreciate your time and really some great information which you provided to us this evening. There was, some questions that we were going to ask you regarding the vaccine and small business relief and even our school district is having some challenges right now. So it's great to hear that those things are on your immediate radar to help us heal financially, physically, and mentally. Are there any questions for the congressman?
Yes, Congressman, I didn't hear anyone talking, so I thought I'd just yell out there. Sorry, Mayor. I just wanted to, on our discussion items tonight is the Equal Rights Amendment, and it's long, like 5 decades overdue passage to provide for equal rights in our Constitution is the 28th Amendment. I'm hoping my colleagues will join me in signing a letter to the Biden administration to put this as something to accomplish in their first 100 days in office. So I'm wondering where you stand on that, and if you know of anything with regard to what we can do, or if it's going to be moving forward as we hope it will be.
Well, I think the letter from your township would go a long way. The president needs to know that he's doing the right thing, and we definitely support that amendment, and are looking forward to its passage. And it could very well be one of the things that the president attempts to accomplish in his first 100 days. He's really on the move, and we're very excited about the opportunities that having a Congress and a Senate and a White House that basically start on the same page with most of the values and things we feel are important to the country, and it's working out the details. So I'm very excited about this opportunity. Also, I should mention that in this Congress, and one of the reasons we tell people, why we, I guess, try to stay around so long is because seniority is really the key in Washington. And we in the 10th district are very fortunate because I am starting to assume some of that seniority. And I was able to become chairman of the rail subcommittee on transportation and infrastructure. I had to give up my chairmanship in Homeland Security, but I'm still on the Committee for Emergency Preparedness, Response, and Recovery. But I have assumed a very important chairmanship in transportation. So I deal with all rail issues across the nation, and hazardous pipelines and hazardous materials. So it's interesting. It's an intersection between my work on Homeland, because on Homeland I was chairman of emergency preparedness, which was making sure that all the pipelines and gas lines and things and natural disasters or man-made disasters came under my purview. Now I have this responsibility of the rail systems and the pipelines in this country and the hazardous materials. So it's almost along the same lines. So that helps me. But it's just a very important chairmanship. And, our residents that, use the train and as their line to work into New York or down to Newark or wherever they go, just know that the 10th district is really railroad bound, whether you're coming up the Northeast Corridor or you have the Booton line or the Summit. I mean, rail really encompasses my district. So I thought it was something very important. Plus we have a president that, has a little understanding of rail, since he rode Amtrak home every night from Washington, D.C., back and forth every day. So we think that the Gateway project and the Portal Bridge projects are both in good stead with our advocacy from the New Jersey delegation, advocacy from the New York delegation, and have the president that rode the Northeast Corridor every night. I think we might be in good shape. So we're looking forward to getting that project really underway. I was happy to help in the 116th Congress get $900 million to start the Portal North Bridge project, which is underway. And so that was a great accomplishment then. But all of the money is in place now for the Portal Bridge, and we are looking to move into the Gateway project. So I just wanted to mention that for all our rail commuters.
Thank you, Congressman. Mr. DeLuca, did you have a question? No. Okay, sorry. All right. Congressman, I don't know. We don't have any. This is up to you. We do have some residents that are with us. I'm not sure they had any questions. Would you be open to taking a question or two if they raised their hand?
Sure.
Okay.
Famous last words. Sure.
Right. Exactly. We'll limit 3 minutes. That's our standing rule here. 3 minutes. That being said, Glenn, do we have any? Nick, do we have any residents that have their hand raised?
As of now, we do not, but if anybody would like to speak to the congressman, just use the raise your hand function. We'll give you 3 minutes. I'm not getting any takers.
If you're on a phone, you can raise your hand with *9.
All right, Congressman.
Okay.
Hearing none. And then,
dodge that bullet.
We got one.
Almost.
You were over there. Mr. Humor.
And I'm going to speak later, so I apologize. But I wanted, since the congressman, we have the advantage. Thank you very much for your service. What is the status about investigations into the Trump presidency and misconduct? And are you supportive of the speaker's efforts to investigate the events of the 6th?
I am in total concert with the Speaker of the House. I think she's demonstrated great leadership under these circumstances. This is really about the Constitution, and I took an oath, and I took that oath very seriously. And you know, to the members of the opposition party that came over and did the right thing, I cannot respect them more for what they've done. They've really shown true allegiance to the Constitution, because even Mitch McConnell, after he voted against convicting the president, got up and said that he was guilty. So everybody knows it. And it's just a matter of us doing what we need to do. The NAACP and my colleague Benny Thompson filed a lawsuit against Donald Trump today. And there are going to be several of us joining that lawsuit. And I see other actions coming in the future. We have to keep this from happening again. We are the beacon in the world for democracy, but that beacon has been diminished by what happened on the 6th of January. Countries are looking at us now and say, how can you preach to us all the time and tell us how we need to be democratic and come here and look at you. Look at the coup that you had. So it's really put us in a bad light and an embarrassment around the world. It has really, really kind of tugged at who we are and what we say we are. So we have to put in firewalls to make sure this never happens again. And I think that we're all working towards that goal.
Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you.
And again, thank you for your time. We know you're very busy, and obviously we have a little while to go. So yes, we'd like to yield your evening back to you. How about that?
Thank you very much. It's really good to see everyone, and hopefully you, any constituents that need it can contact my office. More than the legislation that I foster, I'm here to serve my constituents. So thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. Have a good night.
Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, we will now move on to boards and committees. Mr. DeLuca, I'll yield the floor to you.
You're muted.
It's Now you can hear me. We have appointment to the Maplewood Arts Council through December 31st, 2022. Serge Espatia. Serge, we interviewed and we thought highly of him, and then we recruited him for the Arts Council. So I'd like to move his nomination to the Arts Council.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Daffis,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick,
Yes.
Mayor McGehee.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Fritzen, and congratulations to Serge. Is Serge here today?
No.
Okay, understood. All right. Well, congratulations and a great asset to your committee, Mr. DeLuca. We'll now move on to agenda item number 7, which is public comment on agenda items only. Nick, do we have anyone who would like to discuss any of the current agenda items with a 3-minute limit?
All right, so we'll do public comment with a 3-minute limit on agenda items only. Do we have anybody who would like to address the Township Committee? I have no takers, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Nick. We'll move on to agenda item number 8. We have an ordinance on final. Ms. Fritzen?
Yes, Mayor. Item number 8, ordinance on final passage, ordinance number 3014-21. An ordinance to amend Chapter 271 of the Code of the Township of Maplewood entitled Zoning and Development Regulations. This ordinance will amend ordinance number 3008-20 by allowing accessory dwelling units in homes that have been designated as historic by the Historic Preservation Commission.
This ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board of the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public with accordance with the law. Would anyone like to speak on accessory dwelling units? Hearing none.
No taker.
Thank you, Nick. Hearing none, we will close public comment. May I get a motion, Mr. Daffis?
Thank you, Mayor. I move this ordinance be adopted as a whole and the clerk be directed to publish the same as a passed ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
Second.
Mayor, I can just report that I've heard from the planning board. The secretary has reported that the planning board has reviewed the ordinance and finds that it is consistent with the master plan.
Thank you, Mr. Desiderio. Any further discussion on this ordinance on final? Hearing none, Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Daffis,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick,
Yes.
Mayor McGehee.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Fritzen. We now have another ordinance on final.
Yes, Mayor. Item number 9, ordinance on final passage. Ordinance number 3015-21 is an ordinance to amend Chapter 271 of the Code of the Township of Maplewood entitled Zoning and Development Regulations. This ordinance will adopt the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Official Standards for site triangles for development projects approved subsequent to the effective date of this ordinance within the Township of Maplewood.
This ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board of the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the law. Would anyone like to speak on state highway transportation official standards for site triangles for development projects?
I got no takers.
Thank you, Nick. Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. May I get a motion, Mr. Daffis?
Thank you, Mayor. I move this ordinance be adopted as a whole and the clerk be directed to publish the same as a passed ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
Second.
Mayor,
Yes.
again, if I may, I can report that the planning board has reviewed this ordinance and has found that it is consistent with the master plan. However, they did submit a comment back. The board recommended that the language be amended to omit the reference to a specific manual, AASHTO, I guess it's pronounced, and rather reference current guidelines. My recommendation, Mayor, is that we send this to Mr. Kittner for his review and analysis. To amend it presently without his input, I think would not be useful and certainly would require a substantive amendment. So my suggestion is that the committee review this now, make its determination, and then we can send it to Mr. Kittner for additional review.
This is on final passage though, so
Yeah.
And Mr. Kittner is the one who suggested the AASHTO standards to begin with.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, so he may say no. That's my point.
oh, okay.
My point, quite simply, is is for you to pass it. My recommendation is for you to pass it tonight. We'll send it to Mr. Kittner, and he can then make a determination as to whether or not he wants to make a recommended change.
Okay, then I pass it. Yeah.
I just want to add a little more context to this because I was present at the planning board hearing and this discussion in particular. What they're suggesting is a very minor, I don't disagree with Mr. Desideri's approach, by the way, I'm just adding color here, context. What they're suggesting is a very minor edit. They just want to ensure that if our ordinance says, as per AASHTO's manual 2019, when that changes and becomes, when it revises rather and becomes 2020 or 2021 and so on and so forth, that there isn't an issue with our ordinance. So perhaps Mr. Kittner can review and suggest that it just says the AASHTO manual without referring to a particular edition.
Thank you, Mr. Daffis. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none. Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Daffis,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick,
Yes.
Mayor McGee.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Fritzen. We have our third ordinance on final.
Yes, Mayor, it's item number 10, ordinance on final passage, ordinance number 3017-21. Bond ordinance providing for the construction, equipping, and furnishing of a new library in and by the Township of Maplewood in the County of Essex, New Jersey, appropriating $20 million therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $12 million in bonds or notes of the Township to finance the cost thereof.
This ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board of the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the law. Do we have anyone who would like to speak on this ordinance regarding bond ordinance for the construction of our new library?
We do, Mayor. First up is Mr. David Humer.
Good evening, David Humer, 26 Nelson Place, and I'm a member of the Maplewood Memorial Library Board of Trustees. And other people may speak in more detail about things I mentioned in passing. I support ordinance 3017 on final passage, and I thank you for your strong and vital support of the library and planned new building. On a side note, it's smart of you to authorize 12 million and commit to 10 million because the state payment system looks to be very slow. And Maplewood is going to get a better outcome by keeping the work continuous. So I appreciate that nuance in what you're authorizing tonight. But this is more than smart. Your commitment to a new library is a very wise long-term investment in our town. State grant programs for libraries don't come along very often. And the willingness of you, the TC, to commit to half the cost was a necessary prerequisite for the library to apply for the state money. So there are other people in the meeting tonight who have a more extensive institutional memory, but I cannot recall a larger grant for a single project from the state of New Jersey to the Township of Maplewood in the time I've lived here. You know, between the $8 million from the state and the already successful effort of the Friends of the Maplewood Library and primarily the Maplewood Library Foundation, the township is getting a 21st century library at 50% off. It is a once in a generation deal. It's also very wise because long-term interest rates are low. It's a great time for Maplewood to borrow for infrastructure. And you and the governing bodies before you have kept your debt ratio to property value really low, 1.05%, Joe Kay told me today. That means you can borrow with confidence. So we are at a key point. After you vote tonight, the Library Building Committee and the Library Foundation can broaden the fundraising effort and can finalize the building plans. What we have now is not a wish list library. The Building Committee has already reduced the plans that came out of our meetings with the community. So we face some hard decisions given the current budget. But since we have sufficient money for the core project, any donations that we can get from our residents have a very powerful effect to get us to an ideal library for everyone in our community and beyond.
30 seconds.
You're going to help innumerable Maplewood residents, including residents you don't even know and will never meet for decades to come with this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Humer. Appreciate your words.
Okay, yep, next up, guys, Ben Cohen, you got 3 minutes. Hang on one sec. Hang on, gang. Mr. Cohen, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor McGehee and members of the Township Committee. I'm Ben Cohen. I'm president of the Maplewood Memorial Library Foundation. Tonight's meeting, at which you will consider authorizing a $12 million commitment to fund the construction of a new library building, is a historic moment for the people of Maplewood. Our foundation first appeared before the Township Committee over 5 years ago on November 15th, 2015. Our library director, Sarah Lester, the chair of our library board, Kate McCaffrey, and I spoke to the Township Committee back then about our dream for the people of Maplewood. And that dream was a brand new 21st century library, which is well needed. As you may recall, when you were Mayor DeLuca, I asked the Township Committee that evening for $12 million to help build a new library. And I can still remember the look of incredulity on your face when I asked for that amount of money. So please excuse me for the silly smile on my face tonight. I just can't help that. But my real emotion here is one of gratitude. A lot of people have worked very hard over these last 5+ years to get to where we are this evening. The Township Committee, the Library Board, the Library Director and her staff, the Foundation, and the Friends of the Library. But we would not be here tonight at this historic moment if it were not for the guidance, the inspiration, the hard work, and most of all, the leadership of one person in particular, and that person is Vic DeLuca. For all of those reasons, we and every citizen of Maplewood owe Vic a huge debt of gratitude. So thank you, Vic, for all you have done for us and for your leadership throughout this long period. Mayor McGehee, members of the Township Committee, on this historic occasion, I urge you, do the right thing, vote to fund, fully fund our new library building for all the people of Maplewood and for our children and our grandchildren. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Appreciate your words.
Okay, Mayor, next up, Sarah Lester.
Thank you. I'm Sarah Lester, a 15-year resident of Maplewood and the proud director of the Maplewood Memorial Library. Thank you, Mayor and Township Committee, for investing in the future of Maplewood. Our new library will be inspiring, inclusive, technologically advanced, sustainable, and open for all for years to come. Thank you to the library trustees under the leadership of Kate McCaffrey for spearheading this effort. Thank you to Ben Cohen and the Library Foundation for enlisting private support through the capital campaign. And thank you to our friends of the library and to the Library Building Committee. A big thank you as well to our amazing library staff, the backbone of our library, and to our incredible community members and library supporters. It is an honor and a privilege to build this library with and for all of you and for the generations that will follow. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Lester.
Okay, Mayor, next up, Catherine McCaffrey.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak to you all. I want to thank you on behalf of the Board of the Library Trustees for the support that you have shown us and considering the passage of this act tonight. We encourage you to fully support the funding of our library. Our library is the heart of our community. It serves every member of our community, and we desperately need a new revitalized structure. So thank you so much for championing this cause, for supporting our library, and for giving me an opportunity to speak on its behalf tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Cassidy.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, that's everyone.
Thank you, Nick. We will now close public comment. And did I hear someone else or no? Oh, okay. Just checking. Thank you again, Nick. So we will now close our public comment, and I'm happy to make a motion on this. I move this ordinance be adopted as a whole and the clerk be directed to publish the same as a pass ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
Second.
Is there any discussion from my colleagues?
It's been a long road, but we got to a very good place, and I agree with Ben. There's a lot of people worked really hard on this, but I want to, I also want to recognize Vic, who is, he's been working on this since before I was on the Township Committee, and he's really spearheaded this and helped to clear a lot of obstacles in its path. And there are others who've certainly helped, but if it wasn't for Vic, we wouldn't be here now. We wouldn't have the state funding, and we wouldn't have this library of the future coming to Maplewood. So it's my pleasure and my privilege really to vote for this tonight.
I second it.
I'll second that emotion too. Yeah, no, were it not for the substantial grant, I think we'd all be a little more worried about voting for it. But as Mr. Humer said, we're basically getting half price library here thanks to everyone's efforts. And thank you, Mr. DeLuca, for your leadership on this.
Let's vote.
Well,
oh, before we change our mind.
Ms. Fritzen, please call that roll.
Adams.
Yes.
Mr. Daffis.
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca.
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick.
Absolutely, yes.
Mayor McGehee.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Fritzen. We now have ordinance on introduction.
Yes, Mayor, introduction of new ordinance. It's item number 11, ordinance number 3018-21. Bond ordinance providing a supplemental appropriation of $300,000 for improvements to the pool utility in and by the Township of Maplewood in the County of Essex, New Jersey, and authorizing the issuance of $285,000 in bonds or notes of the Township to finance part of the cost thereof.
I move the passage of this ordinance on first reading, its publication according to the law with the Maplewood South Orange News Record, and a hearing to be held on March 2nd.
Second.
Thank you. Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams.
Yes.
Mr. Daffis.
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca.
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick.
Yes.
Mayor McGehee.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Fritzen. Another ordinance on introduction, please.
Yes, Mayor, item number 12, introduction of new ordinance, ordinance number 3019-21. Bond ordinance providing for various capital improvements in and by the Township of Maplewood in the County of Essex, New Jersey, appropriating $1,335,000 therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $1,268,250 in bonds or notes of the Township to finance part of the cost thereof.
I move the passage of this ordinance on its first reading, its publication according to law in the Maplewood South Orange News Record, and a hearing to be held on March 2nd.
Second.
Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams.
Yes.
Mr. Daffis,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick,
Yes.
Mayor McGehee.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fritzen. We're now on agenda item number 13, reports from departments. Mr. Kaloje is with us this evening, so I'll yield the floor to him.
Thank you, Mayor. I actually don't have any report to provide this evening. I'm here in case there were some questions on a couple of the discussion items this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Kaloje. You're always welcome at any meeting, for the record. Moving on to agenda item number 14, we'll first hear from our Township Administrator, Mr. Schuster. Mr. Schuster, you have the floor.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. I will be brief tonight. As usual, we are dealing with the COVID pandemic. We have had a number of employees who have had issues and exposures. As you know, we've been working our way through them. The staff has been excellent in doing everything possible to prevent the spread of this. So we're happy to keep up the good work and keep up with all the precautions that we're doing. Sometimes that means isolating. Sometimes that means doing meetings remotely or doing things that we don't normally do. But I think we're all doing a great job and doing our part to end this pandemic. Next, I want to give a big thank you again to Public Works. They've been out for a number of events, and looks like there might be another event coming up over the next couple of days. So I just want to thank them and all the first responders for everything that they've been doing and responding throughout these events. And lastly, just so everyone knows that there will be some budget hearings coming up. The next, if you're not doing anything for the general public and you really need to see some entertainment, come to the next 3 Saturdays and see these budget hearings. They're always good to see, at least in my experience. So I want to invite everyone out and get to see what the blueprint is for 2021 and how we go ahead and make some important decisions. So those will be the next 3 Saturdays, and look forward to presenting a budget and working with all of you to craft our finances for the current fiscal year. And that is all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Schuster. Any questions for Mr. Schuster? Hearing none, we will move on to Mr. Desiderio.
Mayor, I have 3 quick items. One, we have a request for a subordination of mortgage under the housing program, under the affordable housing program. It has been the custom to generally grant these. It is a subordination of an existing mortgage to a new first mortgage that the homeowner is doing to refinance, in all probability to reduce the rate. I have looked at various documents. I see no reason why you shouldn't do that. So I just ask a motion to approve that. The original loan was taken out in 2012. So there's only a couple of more years left on the loan. So I would suggest that I recommend that you permit it.
I move it.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Fritzen, can you please call the roll?
Ms. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Daffis,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Lembrick,
Yes.
Mayor McGehee.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fritzen. Mr. Desiderio, you have the floor.
Yeah, second is there will be will rec fees, and I think I messed this up. I think I had sent it to Ms. McCuso, and I think she approved it. I think she wants to run it by the Rec Advisory Committee, but we should have an ordinance on for next meeting with the new fees for recreation activities starting in the spring. So I'll have that for you.
Yeah, and Mr. Desiderio, that was sent to the Recreation Advisory Committee, and by and large there were no objections, but there were some questions, and that committee is meeting tomorrow night. So I think that we should be able to address any of that in the meantime and put that on for the next meeting.
Okay, so if there are any changes or whatever, you have a copy of it, right, Mr. Lembrick?
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. And we provided one to the Recreation Advisory Committee. So yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty much all resolved now over email, but since they're meeting tomorrow night, I'll let you know if there's any issues that need to be addressed. But otherwise, I think this can go forward on the next meeting.
Okay.
For passage. Thank you.
Will do. And the last thing is, at the last meeting, you had asked me we had discussed the issue of supporting Newark's application for certification to the Supreme Court. I had contacted Jersey City. I then followed up with them. I have not heard back from them. I will gladly follow up again based on the time frame that they gave me. I think we're running into a tight time frame. I still haven't seen any substantive argument that they're going to present. But if there's someone who knows Mayor Fulop in Jersey City and wants to reach out and see if they're willing to share with us, I don't think there could be any harm in that, because obviously I'm talking to council and he has to go to someone to get authority. So I will follow up, but if there's someone who knows Mayor Fulop, it might be useful. That's
Noted.
all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Desiderio. Any additional questions for Mr. Desiderio? Hearing none, we'll now yield the floor to Ms. Fritzen, our Township Clerk.
Thanks, Mayor. I really only have one thing, and that's to report that, again, a reminder that commuter parking for 2021, the permits are available, as well as the merchant parking permits, and enforcement has begun. So again, it's a simple process. Everything's on the website. The information can be dropped off to any one of our 3 drop boxes at Town Hall, which are checked 4 times a day, via mail, or well, that would be the only options. And we turn them around right away. I would say the person would have their new permit by the next day, if not that day, if they came back to pick it up at the door. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fritzen. Are there any questions for Ms. Fritzen?
I have a question, Mayor, if I may.
Mr. Daffis.
Thank you. Ms. Fritzen, as you know, I've been sending your way a few emails here and there from residents who were not aware that commuter parking permitting is back. We were very courteous with our extensions, but at this point, you know, people are going to get a ticket if they don't have the required permit. Can you talk a little bit about what notices went out and how they went out to those with existing permits to sort of educate about where we are now?
Sure, Mr. Daffis. I didn't realize you were sending them my way, but
I was.
okay. So I have responded to 2 people today that we had notification as far as the grace period ending on January 30th for the extension. If you had a 2020 permit, you had it extended until January 30th. We had notification in the form of e-blast, the township website, and I just keep speaking about it at every township committee meeting on purpose, just to get the word out. So I've heard from a couple of people, and I think that they were satisfied with my follow through.
Who would not be satisfied with your follow through, Ms. Fritzen?
Thank you, Mr. Daffis.
Thank you for your report. Thank you for your answer to my question, rather. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daffis. Any more questions for Ms. Fritzen? Hearing none, we'll move on to agenda item number 15, reports from elected officials. We will first hear from Deputy Mayor Dean Daffis.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll be quick. I won't go into other items that other co-liaisons may bring up, including yourself, Mayor. Out of code enforcement, there is an agenda item for discussion, so I'll make those remarks there. Out of the age-friendly initiative, Soma 2 Towns for All Ages, I want to report delightfully that we heard from the Grotta Fund. They have approved our funding, our last year funding for this year. So sometime mid-year, we need to come to a decision about how we're going to carry this initiative forward. We will be receiving a recommendation from the management committee shortly, and I will bring that forward to you all, and we will make a decision. The management committee and the initiative will be focusing on housing concerns of our older adults, and we keep hearing about that coming up over and over again in surveys that we've done. We hear about it in our senior advisory committees in both towns. So certainly having older adults at the table as we move forward with our master plan this year. Mayor, is going to be very, very important to ensure that their perspective and their needs are accounted for in how we envision our community, our blueprint for our community's development, and also to ensure that health and wellness is really the glue that ties everything together that we do in town. The Community Board on Police, we're expecting, Mr. Lembrick and I are eagerly anticipating a recommendation from the subcommittee charged with putting together the crisis intervention team proposal. They know we're fast approaching budget meetings beginning on Saturday, and we heard that we should receive some sort of idea from a budget perspective in the next day or two, if not sooner. The Municipal Drug Alliance will be meeting in early March with our forthcoming medical cannabis provider, Terra Ascend. We're excited about that. They have been terrific in terms of community engagement and education already thus far. They truly have been proven to be a community partner. Tomorrow evening, I will be meeting with the Open Space Trust Advisory Committee and carrying their recommendations forward to Saturday when we meet and talk about our budget. So I'm excited about that. And those are my items, Mr. Mayor. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you, Mr. Daffis. Any questions for Mr. Daffis? All right, hearing none, we'll move forward. We'll hear from Ms. Adams.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have one quick item other than reminding the public to be vigilant about safety with COVID, with the new strains that are in the country, and just wear your mask or double mask everywhere. Had some personal interaction with COVID these days. So I just want to make sure everybody is vigilant and just be really, really careful, and just don't give up. It's coming toward an end. We'll get vaccinated and we'll get there, but no time like the present to stay the course. Also, just want to report that we have a meeting with South Orange with regard to Women's History Month, which of course is March. We will have the proclamation with former and current elected women in the community, like we do at our March 2nd meeting, hopefully. And so other than that, we have other events, and somawomen.org is the website that will be populating over the course of the next couple weeks with a robust agenda of events, and also hoping to kick off a funding, a crowdsourcing, if you will, to do women-centric mural, one in each community. And that's a project I'm really excited about too. So that's just in the embryo stage right now, and we're hoping to kick off something with that in the month of March, so that over the course of the year we can raise funds to memorialize women's rights and suffragist work and equality in the community, in some of our murals that we love so much. So that's my report, Mayor. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Any questions for Ms. Adams? Hearing none, we'll move on to Mr. DeLuca.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to remind folks that we have 12 more days of Black History Month. We have still a ton of activities coming up. So go on to our website, maplewoodbhm.com, and you can see the schedule. Next week, we have Mayor McGee. He is going to be doing his book discussion on the cast. And we have a lot of other stuff, as I said, so please come out. You got no excuse. Everybody's home, so they should be on their, checking things out and going to Black History Month events. This Friday, we have a job fair at the Hilton branch of the Maplewood Library from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. And this is for the apothecarium, sorry. This is the medical marijuana dispensary that's going to be opening this spring. And we've been working with them. This is the community host agreement we have that they will be hiring locally. So as you see, the one wrinkle here is we hear it may be snowy in Thursday into Friday. So we'll be making a decision Friday. If it can't be held this Friday, then we're going to have it on the 26th. But hopefully we'll be able to get the snow out of the way. Mr. Schuster, I would ask if you could just let DPW know that this is happening so that they could pay attention to the parking lot and the sidewalk over there, because we're bound to have quite a bit, a good crowd here.
Will do.
Thank you. And then my last item is just on February 24th, which is Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. We're having a Zoom meeting on the Sustainable Essex Alliance Energy Aggregation Program. So anyone who has questions, please come out to Zoom. You can find the connection information on our website, the township website, and we'll have experts explain the program, and we'll be dealing with questions and answers. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeLuca. And thanks for mentioning the book reading. It's a really good book. It's might make you mad, but at least it'll wake you up to a lot of things that are happening from a CAS perspective, currently, historically, as well. So thank you. Any questions for Mr. DeLuca? Hearing none, we'll move on to Mr. Lindbergh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll start with the Public Safety Committee. We met last week and we heard reports from both chiefs, including a review of 2020. Looking back, obviously it was a very busy year for public safety, particularly for our fire department, which also runs the EMS for the township. They had a very challenging year given the pandemic, but we're actually very fortunate that even though people had vacation time or could have taken time off, our firefighters and EMTs showed up for work consistently throughout the pandemic, which not only helped to serve our residents, but also in a year where revenues were not what was expected, it also helped us to keep down our overtime costs. So very proud of the work that our fire department did last year. Our police department, similarly, we saw overtime go down in 2020 below the levels we were expecting historically, and we're appreciative of the hard work that our men and women in uniform did. Not surprisingly, given the reports we were getting throughout the year on crime, nearly across the board, crime and particularly violent crime was down. Property crime was also down, largely due to the pandemic. People were at home. People were not out and about. One disturbing trend that I think we've noted in the past, but certainly brought home when we looked at the year-end numbers, was that while violent crime was basically down across the board, it wasn't necessarily true of assaults, and that's because we did see a significant increase in domestic violence and domestic issues in 2020, and that's something that that I hope that we can continue to bring resources to bear to, and hopefully as we look at crisis intervention and using more social work within Maplewood, I think that's clearly an area that needs to be addressed. And then on the topic of things that need to be addressed, I want to switch over and talk a little bit about the situation with our schools. Many of us watched over the past few months with growing disappointment the dysfunction that's been very public and apparent between our school district and our teachers union. And, you know, it's not our position to place blame or take sides. But as representatives of the community, you know, we do hear consistently from residents, you know, particularly parents who've been growing increasingly frustrated by the situation, particularly what seems to be the constant changes in plans with respect to our schools, return to school, and the fact that communications have not necessarily turned out to be reliable, that there have been promises made and not kept, schedules set and not adhered to, and a fair bit of whiplash when the district announces one thing through communication and then almost immediately the teachers union issues a statement saying that they're not on board, that they're basically vetoing that action. You know, and again, it's not our role as a township committee to take sides in this, but it is our role as community leaders to take an interest. And as part of our SOMA 2 towns and school district committee that I was a part of putting together back in 2016, the mayor and I today met. We had our first meeting in a while. The mayor and I had the opportunity to meet with Superintendent Dr. Taylor, with Business Administrator Paul Roth, with Board of Education President Thayer Joshua, with Board of Education Vice President Aaron Siders, and with our colleagues from South Orange, Village President Sheena Collum and Trustee Donna Collier. And we conveyed to district leadership our concerns and the fact that, you know, that we've been discouraged by the way that, you know, the two sides of public servants, in this case, the district and the teachers, seem to be unable and possibly even uninterested in coming together to, in partnership and in good faith, to figure out a way to get our kids back to school and to work on a plan moving forward. And the mayor and I are going to continue this dialogue. You know, it's going to be an ongoing communication with district leadership and with our colleagues in South Orange. But we clearly communicated the fact that we are interested, that our residents are concerned, and that much of what has happened over the past few months has frankly been a bad look for both sides, both the union and the school district, and that we are willing to do whatever we can do to help the two sides to come together for the benefit of the children in our community, because they deserve that. So, Mr. Mayor, that's my report, but I know you were in the meeting as well. So if there's anything that I missed or that you'd like to add, I certainly, you know, don't want to prevent you from putting in your view.
Thank you, Mr. Lindbergh. You know, as Mr. Lindbergh articulated, you know, it was a good meeting. We had an opportunity to listen and hear from the leadership of the administration as well as the Board of Ed. And frankly, when you're in negotiations with another party, sometimes you're unable to communicate things that you would, because it could be theoretically leveraged against you in future negotiations. That said, you know, from my assessment, there was a lot of disappointment and regarding the lack of good faith that occurred in the last 24 hours or so. It goes without saying that any type of communication of that caliber that would be sent out impacting 7,200 children would clearly be vetted through in good faith and through a process. And so for that to be communicated to our community, including myself as a parent in the school district, and then for that other communication to subsequently occur, you know, that gives me pause regarding the type of tactics that are being leveraged which directly impact the physical and mental and now the financial health of our community. And I just hope to see those individuals who thought that was most prudent to do better. As Mr. Lindbergh articulated, we will continue to collaborate and take an active voice now and role in this process through our collaboration with the administration as well as the Board of Ed. We have historically, obviously, been very respectful of the process and the swim lanes, if you will, and we will continue to do so. But we will also be a united front, behind our district as well as our board, with the bottom line of the work of the people and our children, including Mr. Lindbergh's and mine. We have to move forward positively and find a resolution to this matter. So I do appreciate the time of the administration, as well as the members of the Board of Ed attended today. And there are more meetings to come. And we will keep everyone abreast of the situation. We are keenly aware that this is a serious issue, and we do not want our children of our community to be further disappointed. Thank you, Mr. Lindbergh. Before I continue my report, I'd like to yield the floor back to Ms. Adams.
Thank you, Mayor. I just, in this school related, I just wanted to remind the community, and thank you for allowing me to speak again, since I forgot to, that to all the families in our community, there are still free grab and go lunches still being given out at Columbia High School and at Seth Boyden Mondays through Fridays. So if anyone, any family or student is in need, to not hesitate to go take advantage of that availability. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. A very, very critical point. So I just have a handful of items. First, I will start with COVID, the COVID pandemic. I was on a call this morning with fellow mayors in Essex County and learned that we have launched the senior transportation pilot program that has started. It is not at this point inclusive of Maplewood. There are other communities, including Newark, that they're initially starting with. But as they trial run it through, in addition to more vaccine being available to the county, that it will be inclusive of all municipalities, including Maplewood. And we do have representation there from our township and appreciate their efforts in that regard. So more to come, but the transportation pilot for our seniors is now officially underway. And in regarding COVID, our current numbers as of this evening are 1,045 confirmed cases of COVID-19. And unfortunately, in the last 24 hours, we had two deaths in our community, an 88-year-old female and a 71-year-old male, bringing our fatality total up to 33 wonderful lives in the township of Maplewood lost to the COVID-19 pandemic. Our committee on entrepreneurship and economic development has met recently. There's a lot happening in our community, even under the pandemic, a lot of exciting things. There are ongoing conversations regarding two of our significant anchors in Maplewood Village. That includes the theater and Kings. We're excited to see the progress of where that's going and look forward in the coming months to being able to make some announcement in that regard. We also are excited about some potential development opportunities that are inclusive, off of Valley Street, as well as in the DeHart Park area as well. Irvington Avenue, the project by the county continues. It's a little bit slow now with COVID and with the weather, but they are moving forward with their beautification and infrastructure streetscaping project. And that slowly will move up Irvington Avenue all the way to Parker and then on into Irvington. From a project perspective, there are several construction projects. You just have to drive around the community to see them. Anywhere from our new Dunkin' Donuts at 1992 Springfield Avenue, which is, starting to get close to being ready to go. Our ATC facility right off of Prospect and Springfield Avenue. Terracing, Our Audi dealership, it's beautiful. If you drive down Milburn Avenue, you'll see that as well. And if you're on Baker Street, you'll also see that 104 Baker, that project which is a mixed development, is coming along quite nicely. So a lot of activity occurring, in the township in regards to economic development and responsible development. I want to touch on a couple more things here, and I guess I will follow the suit of my colleague, which I like that he did. I will share my screen. Let's see, here we go. The first thing I want to touch on is we will be having a seminar regarding cannabis, speaking of the ATC. This event is coming up on the 23rd of next week of February. And so all this information is available on our township website, but do come out to learn more about cannabis and also the great values that it provides in regards to alternate treatment center. We still have a significant, food insecurity in our community. Ms. Adams touched on that regarding the work of our school district. But this is next Thursday, so food distribution event in Bloomfield, New Jersey. This information is also available on our website. But honestly, if you are suffering from food insecurity, please do not be bashful. I also want to mention the efforts of the YMCA, which is also holding nearly weekly events as well for food insecurity. So these are very, very important events, which I advise all to take advantage of if necessary. And speaking to what Mr. Lindbergh articulated earlier in his report, we do recognize that domestic violence is an issue and is relevant here in the township of Maplewood. That being said, there is a webinar to learn about how to address domestic violence, inclusive of how to set up a restraining order and other things as well. So we'll have this up on our website as well. But obviously, if you have any issue with domestic violence, please also reach out to our police department and seek help. No one should feel alone in our community. And then finally, what I want to say is I want to thank again our Maplewood Arts Council and their work with putting up the poetry project that's been going on now throughout 2021. There's a picture of one of our great poets, a local resident. And as you drive all throughout our community, we'll see these particular displays of beautiful words throughout our community. And our Summer TV collaborated with the township to take several videos, including this one here, of the actual authors reading their poetry and then sharing the sites where they're located. So just wanted to share that. Again, it's a wonderful project. It's very fitting for Black History Month at this time. So that concludes my report, and we'll now move on to agenda item number 16, which is discussion items. I'll yield the floor to Mr. DeLuca to discuss a cannabis local tax.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I think it's pretty straightforward. We have the ability as a local government to impose a 2%, essentially a sales tax on cannabis that's purchased in Maplewood. And so with the Alternative Treatment Center opening up in April, I think we ought to introduce this and give it a final approval in March, so it's on the books and we can start collecting the money.
I'll move it.
There you go. I'll second it.
Well, so what you're moving it to have me put it on as an ordinance, right?
Correct.
Okay, I'll put it on as an ordinance.
Right. And to the extent you need a third to show there's a consensus, I'm on board too.
Okay, got it.
Perfect.
Welcome if you got them.
Yeah, 2% is 2%. We'll take what we can get.
Okay, that's it.
All right. Thank you, Mr. DeLuca. We'll move on to agenda discussion item number 2. We'll hear from Ms. Adams regarding ERA.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. As I mentioned with the Congressman earlier, the ERA Coalition is requesting that the Biden administration get this done in the first 100 days, get it, the Equal Rights Amendment. Virginia was the 38th state to ratify it at the end of January. So those are the constitutional requirements to have this become the 28th Amendment to the US Constitution. Just quickly, basically what it says, Section 1 is the equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. Section 2, the Congress shall have the power to enforce by appropriate legislation the provisions of the article. And Section 3, the amendment shall take effect 2 years after the date of ratification. So the sooner we get this done, the better. As the Congressman said, it would go a long way for us to send a letter in support or sign on to the, or both, sign on to the letter that the ERA coalition is sending to the Biden administration. So I'd ask my colleagues for support on doing one or both of those things.
I would support doing both, Ms. Adams.
I second that. It's about time. Well,
So
it's
what
been
I'd say, it's long past time.
Yeah.
Are you making a motion?
You would like to make a motion?
Ms. Adams is muted.
I muted myself instead of unmuting myself because I was already unmuted. Zoom.
Are you making a motion?
Yes, I'd like to move that we sign on the letter with the ERA coalition and pass a resolution urging the Congress to pass the Equal Rights Amendment to the Constitution.
Any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Daffis,
absolutely yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick,
Yes.
Mayor McGeehee.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Fritzen. Ms. Adams?
I was just going to ask Mr. Desiderio, do you need me to send you something to?
If you would like, sure, that, you know, from the historical perspective stuff would be wonderful, including the resolution, and I'll be happy to incorporate it and get it to you to take a look at.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. We'll now move on to discussion item number 3, the SALT Standing Declaration. Mr. Lembrick.
Thank you, Mr. McGeehee. I mean, really what this is I am proposing that the Township Committee pass a resolution supporting 2 different proposed acts of Congress that are, from what I can tell, largely duplicative, and either one would probably accomplish the objective, but I think we should support both. And this has to do with state and local taxes and the deductibility under federal tax law. This isn't something that I think many of us thought much about until 2017, when the ironically titled Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 passed under the Trump administration. And what this did is, until that time, taxpayers in the U.S. were legally entitled, permitted to deduct the full amount of their state and local tax payments from their federal taxes. And the law passed in 2017 and it took effect in 2018, capped the deductibility of those taxes at $10,000. So what that does is it effectively taxes the taxes that taxpayers pay above $10,000. So, the full deductibility that existed up to that point protects against that double taxation, and it really has the policy impact of encouraging states, counties, townships to support public services like schools, law enforcement, public safety, transportation, infrastructure, health, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This had an outsized impact on New Jersey and a very significant impact on Essex County and Maplewood specifically. The average tax bill in Essex County, property tax bill at large is already over the $10,000 cap. The average residential property tax bill in Maplewood last year in 2020 was $16,634. So even without including any sort of state tax, the average household here is already well above that cap. And in fact, over 80% of our residents paid more than $10,000 in combined state and local taxes last year. So, when you combine this with the fact that New Jersey is each year, in the top 3 of what's known as the giver states, which are the states that pay significantly more to the federal government than we get back in federal aid. The state and local tax deduction was really a policy that helped to mitigate that burden somewhat. And when that was taken away, it's only exacerbated the extent to which states like New Jersey and New York, are treated unfairly, and our residents are treated unfairly. So Governor Murphy and Governor Cuomo have both come out strongly in favor of restoring full deductibility of state and local taxes. Both of our senators, Congressman Payne, who is here tonight, and many of his colleagues have come out. There's 2 different bills. There's the SALT Deductibility Act, and there's the Stop the Attack on Local Taxpayers Act. And the resolution which I've put together, which goes into a little more detail, asks that, says the Township Committee does the following things: that we support the passage of both of those acts, as well as President Biden signing them into law. We thank the senators and congressmen and congresswomen from New Jersey who have co-sponsored and supported those bills. And we call upon all the members of Congress representing New Jersey to support those bills and send a copy of the resolution to our senators, all members in the New Jersey congressional delegation, and President Biden. So I would ask the Township Committee's support in in passing and then sending this resolution.
Second it.
Yeah, Mr. Lemberg, you had me when you talked about the difference in property taxes in the fourth whereas here. So I would move this.
Yeah, I'll second that. You had me when you put it on for discussion.
And
All right.
Keep with our previous position on this. A couple of years ago, we joined the lawsuit that New Jersey brought. So absolutely, yes.
Yeah. I think none of us are Johnny-come-latelys to this issue. This is something that's very much been on our radar for a while. And now that, it was a non-starter, frankly, when the Senate was majority Republican and there was Trump in the White House. But now that President Biden has taken over and the Senate is at least at 50-50 with the Vice President able to break a tie, I think that, as the Congressman reported earlier tonight, this is now something that's very much alive in Washington. And to the extent that we can pile on and add a little momentum, I think we should do that. So I appreciate that. I think we still haven't voted on it, but I think it's been moved and seconded twice.
Yes. So Ms. Christie, please call the roll.
Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Daffis,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Lembrick,
Yes.
Mayor McGehee.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Fritzen. And thank you, Mr. Lembrick, for bringing this very important.
Mayor, if I may just quickly to Mr. Lembrick.
Yes.
If you could go through it, Mr. Lembrick, one last time, review the numbers in light of what Mr. Kaloji sent you, and just look at some of those dates to make sure that they're reflective of what you want in the resolution, okay?
I'll do that, Mr. Desidero. And then I tried to Maplewoodize it as best as I could, but I will leave that to the master.
I'm not asking you to knock me out of a job. I just want the facts, that's all.
Fair enough.
Thank you, Mr. Lembrick. We'll now have our fifth and final discussion item on grease traps. Mr. Daffis.
We covered a lot of ground tonight. We went from all those exciting things to grease traps. Thanks, Mayor. I want to start first by qualifying something that you mentioned earlier in your report, Mayor, about senior transportation options. for some of our older adults who want to get vaccinated, who are eligible to be vaccinated right now. We want to let people know that, yes, the county is implementing a pilot senior transportation program for vaccinations only, which is not currently available in Maplewood, but Maplewood has been proactive in this regard. We do have senior transportation available for our seniors to be vaccinated, and we've already transported seniors to the vaccination site. For anyone who needs to get to the vaccination site, please call 973-763-5287. I'll repeat that. That's 973-763-5287. You can leave a message. We're checking those messages. We have a driver. We have a van ready to go. For seniors who need ADA access, the county's existing access link is available. If you just Google access link, you can find all the information, or you can send an email to soma2towns@gmail.com. That's soma2, the number 2 towns@gmail.com. So I just want people to know that there are ways for them to get to the vaccination site right now. Okay, so grease traps. This is something that came out of the code committee recently. It's also in partnership with our Department of Health and our public health officer who brought it to our attention. What we want to do here, what I'm asking from the committee tonight, is support for Mr. Desiderio to move forward with an ordinance for introduction. Mr. Desiderio is already drafting an ordinance. We're still working on some of the language, but essentially, we in Maplewood, unlike most of our towns surrounding us, currently do not have any enforcement teeth with respect to restaurant grease traps. All restaurants are certainly required to have grease traps as per the UCC, the Uniform Construction Code, so they cannot get a permit. They cannot be licensed, rather, to open their establishment without them. But what we will be doing here is taking that to the next level. We will be allowing our public health team that does the inspections annually of restaurants to also include proper maintenance of grease traps. Again, other towns have put this into their ordinances, and we want to do the same thing. This would require that restaurants annually certify that they have their grease traps properly maintained through a third-party vendor, and that they're cleaned out a few times a year, this, that, and the other. Why? Why bother with this? The answer is obvious, because we have a lot more restaurants in our business districts, and they are putting a lot of strain on our sewer lines, right, which are very, very old. So we just want to make sure that fats and oils and others such substances are not, entering our sewer. They're not entering, our drainage, and that restaurants are doing what they need to do. And I'm going to invite Mr. Desiderio for anything else he'd like to add.
No, what we've done is we've taken an ordinance, we've sent it. I think I've circulated it to everybody on the committee. I think you have a draft. Not so, Mr. Daffis?
Yes, you have.
Okay, and I've circulated it to our health officer, and she's given me some comments back. She is suggesting that we send it to engineering. I don't know if anyone thinks that's necessary. I did get comments back from Mr. Mendola with regard to his thoughts on it, but if you want it to go to engineering, then we can send it to engineering. I didn't really think it was necessary. That's a different issues that they have. So I would suggest we just clean it up and put it on for your consideration at the next meeting.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think engineering will be happy about it, but they don't really need to weigh in on what it says.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Then I will.
Thank you, Mr. Desiderio. Thank you, Mr. Daffis. Okay, I'd like to go back up and to discuss discussion item number 4, our proposal on fleet vehicle leasing, a pilot. And I yield the floor to Mr. Schuster and at this time.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just going to briefly talk and then I'll turn it over to Glenn. You know, once in a while you have an opportunity to try something new, and this idea we've been kicking around for a little bit. Mr. Koloje has some experience with this model, doing some fleet leasing, rather than the typical outright purchase of vehicles. And there are a number of benefits to consider. So with that, I'll turn over to Glenn to go over the program just to hear your initial thoughts.
Gotcha. Yeah, this is something I would have intended for the budget hearing, but there's some strict order cutoff dates with the hybrid EVs. So I wanted to put it in front of the committee tonight for your consideration, so that if we do want to move forward the next meeting, we can do a resolution to join a co-op and get the contract for you to look at. So back in October, Sonia asked me to look into a fleet analysis management program through Enterprise, and sat down a couple times with the police chief, fire chief, and Paul and the reps from Enterprise. And essentially the goals and objectives of the program would be we free up our capital expenditures by doing these open-ended leases that can refresh our fleet at a faster pace than we currently do, and also have Enterprise kind of implement a fleet management plan. So some of the stuff that we came across when we were doing the fleet analysis is our average vehicle age is about 12 years old. So at the current rate we're replacing vehicles, it would be 2037 by the time we replaced all of our vehicles. So the benefits to replacing vehicles faster is, the newer safety features can lower insurance premiums. Our current fuel efficiency for the entire fleet is about 12 miles to the gallon. So if we start replacing vehicles at a faster rate with more fuel efficiency, we can bring down the aggregate cost of fuel. And Enterprise, after going through the program, we kind of wanted to proceed with a pilot program to do a couple of vehicles. We had one that was in an accident recently and it's totaled. The DPW folks need a couple all-wheel drive vehicles for the snowstorms, and the proposal I wanted to put in front of you is for 3 vehicles this year. It would have a budget impact of about $15,900. We wouldn't have to do it through the traditional capital budget. And there's opportunities for savings in the long term, because as we use our government pricing, we get the vehicles cheaper, and Enterprise also sells them at market, and that equity that we net comes back and lowers our payments in the long term too. So I just wanted to open it up to questions, take your pulse, and if you have any questions for me, Greg, or Joe about the program.
The floor is open.
What did you say the cost was?
If we do 3 vehicles this year, the goal is to do two all-wheel drive vehicles and a hybrid plug-in EV. The other nice thing about the open-ended lease is that as we add EV infrastructure, we can just give them back. They'll sell them at market. We'll take the net equity and get EVs and plug them into the fleet. So we're not restricted to any kind of terms with Enterprise either.
I believe the question was the cost. Was that 15?
Oh, 15.9.
15.9 per year, correct?
Right.
Right now for the 3.
And only one is a hybrid?
The one is a hybrid plug-in. I could do a hybrid SUV, but it's the difference is 28.4 and 36.6. So we could, it would be a higher impact to the budget, but I could do a hybrid SUV.
Can you model that out maybe, Glenn?
Yeah, so over the next week, I can send you all the menu pricing and build it out, but I just wanted to kind of take your pulse this meeting, because there are some order cutoff dates when we start looking at the hybrids. Like the one plug-in, the deadline was for tomorrow, but I got new models that have a farther out time frame, so we don't need to rush it. But yeah, I can get you all background material and menu pricing and all that too.
So I guess the question you're asking is, what is our appetite to move forward with this leasing program, correct?
Correct.
So that being said, would anyone else like to speak on their appetite?
I have a good appetite to consider this, but I'd like to see some modeling.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're open to it. It's just, we just want to make sure we're doing making the right fiscal decision here. You know, we want to also transition. I would like you to also model fully electric vehicles too. So.
Sure, I can get some updated pricing. And like I said, I just wanted to take the pulse, because if there was no appetite for it, there was no sense in, going through the resolution to do the co-op and stuff like that. And we can just stick with the capital plan like we normally do.
So I think, Glenn, I think the direction is that there is an appetite, there is a pulse, we're interested, and would appreciate your efforts to continue the process to give us the model so we can take a deeper dive over the next 2 to 3 weeks and go from there. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Any additional questions for Glenn? All right. Hearing none, we will move on to agenda item number 17, our consent agenda. I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that we adopt every item on the consent agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, hearing none. Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Daffis,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick,
Yes.
Mayor McGeehee.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fritzen. We're now at agenda item number 18. It's our public comment on any subject matter. I'd like to thank all the members who are here with us tonight. I was trying to thank some of them because we do appreciate when we have participation. Does anyone like to address the Township Committee this time on any subject matter? I see one.
Okay. All right, Mr. Mayor. Shannon Cuddle. You got 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor McGeehee, and thank you to the Maplewood Township Committee. I just wanted to take the opportunity to, wearing my hat of many hats as a Maplewood Library trustee, to thank you, thank the Maplewood Township Committee for their continued support and commitment as we move forward on our library plan and moving into the 21st century. Thank you so much for your vote this evening and for the continued partnership and support. I'm very proud to be such part of a team, as not just with library trustees and friends of the library and the many volunteers and our amazing staff at Maple Memorial and Hilton Library. And again, I just want to also give a special shout out to Committeeman Vic DeLuca for shepherding and his leadership during this whole entire process and envisioning and help lead us into this future that will inspire generations to come. And thank you so much for your leadership in this regard. And not just to you, Vic, for being a fellow model and leader for other committeemen and other leaders in other counties, and up to our Maplewood Township Committee for showing and of course leading the way in Essex County and beyond. So just want to take a moment to say thank you so much for that and your continued support. And thank you, Mayor McGeehee, for allowing me the time to speak this evening.
Thank you. Thank you, Shannon. Would
Okay,
anyone
Mr.
else?
Mayor. Looks like everyone, Mr. Mayor.
Great. Thank you, Nick. At this point, we're at agenda item number 19. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. I think I heard one. I heard a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. We finished under 2 hours.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Meeting.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.